So before building the frame pieces, we bought two different styles of wood. This is known as a 1x2, and we did it by about an 8-foot length right here. We ended up buying a couple of these guys. When you buy these pieces of wood, double check that they are straight. As you can see, this one is so bowed that it actually lifts itself up off of the table a little bit. And that was the issue we ran into when nailing this piece together. From other videos that you might have seen, the other difference that I've done is I did not build an exterior followed by an interior frame. I actually built them combined as pieces that are going to be glued together based on interior measurements. All right, we're just about done building the frame here. We've got our two short sections. These are going to be the 18 inches that we cut out here. These are going to be the 24s that go the length. We used just a small hammer to nail in supporting nails between here and what is actually the interior frame as well. So the way these are set up, that's going to just, the frame or the glass itself is going to sit inside on this side, and they are cut to perfect 45-degree angles. Of course, we just used a hammer and some pretty small, simple nails, a little pencil to mark off where we were going to be at, a square to make sure that all the piece frames could fit together, tape measure to kind of get our measurements. Here's the glass itself. Comes pre-packaged in this. We also had a considerable amount of cardboard and bubble wrap to get off of. And as you can see, when we get down to the actual glass, you can see behind it, but also see the mirror reflection on top is the way it's supposed to go. So this will be the side that faces us. That'll be going upside down from where we're sitting now into the frame, sitting like this. And we'll go ahead and get started putting the actual frame glued and nailed together. The last thing we'll talk about is the actual wood that was used to construct those pieces over there. Again, that's the interior and exterior frame nailed together and cut in sections versus other videos you might see where they do the interior frame for the glass followed by the posterior frame for the window itself. I decided to do them both together to save myself a little bit of time and always use a level to make sure that they were squared off. You got two different pieces of wood here. This one's going to be your exterior frame. I did a little bit of a design to it. As you can tell, it's got that little bit of a bevel which makes up the top portion of it. I would highly recommend to somebody doing this project for the first time to start with a just flat piece and maybe paint it, or if you want to make it look nicer, maybe sand it afterwards. It made cutting of this item extremely difficult. Second thing I'll mention is these 1x2s. So that's a 2-inch here by a 1-inch on the side by however long you want it to be. In this case, it was an 8-footer. We ended up buying two different pieces of wood only because that guy over there, as you can see, is bowed pretty badly to the point where it's actually lifting itself off the table. That also made it very difficult. So when you go to buy the wood, make sure that every piece is square, straight, doesn't curve whatsoever. Otherwise, you're going to run into those issues. The other thing I'll make mention of is when cutting the frame, you're going to end up with these weird triangles. Make sure that you... anytime you're using a decorative piece, you're going to have to switch out sides. This is not something you would have had to do if you were just making a square frame without using this type of design. So again, if this is your first time, learn from my mistake. Don't do something kind of stylish. Just sand it down at the end if you want to, paint it a certain color. But if you don't have experience working with wood, don't go for the flashy design. Alright, so here we're going to go ahead and assemble the Raspberry Pi. These are just the pieces that came out of the bag. Let's go ahead and unbox them and see what we got. So after unboxing, we've got our power supply, the Raspberry Pi motherboard itself, and the case that this guy is going to go inside of, plus the HDMI cord as well. Alright, so we finally got the actual motherboard installed inside of the case. Something to be aware of when putting these things together is that there are two tabs on the side that the motherboard seems to lock down into. If you forget to put those, to kind of tuck them up underneath of it, the case itself will try not to go on correctly. I did also install the heat sinks over the CPU, CPU and the Ethernet and USB controller, just to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So before we actually get to the Raspberry Pi software, what we need to do is make sure that we have everything installed that we need to on the micro SD card that the Raspberry Pi runs off of. Two basic programs that we needed to download was first a formatter for the SD card itself to get it into that FAT32 or FAT32 format. Then that was one I used for the 32 gigabyte, which is the size that I had or lower, but they both essentially do the same thing. And then once that's done, you go to this website here and download the actual Noob software to put onto the SD card, and then we slap it right into the Raspberry Pi, which I'll show you guys in just a minute. Alright, so now that we finally got the SD card, which you're going to need the bigger guy to get yourself plugged into the actual computer, but the micro USB, or micro SD rather, comes out of the top there and gets plugged in underneath the bottom side of the Raspberry Pi. And as you can see with the video attachment here, seems to be working pretty well. So after the Raspberry Pi has gotten its installation from the SD card, what we do is we head over to this website here and download its file. So what you do is you put in bash space -c space apostrophe $ parentheses curl space dash small s capital L space and the website, which in this case was https /raw.githubusercontent.com /mich both M's capital dash magic mirror both N's capital dash master no capital dash installers dash raspberry.sh apostrophe or parenthesis apostrophe. What that did is it caused an installation that we see going on here. I've been told as going through this process to enter Y in for all of the questions that it'll ask you here as we go along, which just kind of stops it from rebooting over and over again as we go through that process, and I'll show you guys once we get to that part. Here's that command we were talking about. Do you want to use PM2 for auto starting using a magic mirror? We're going to go ahead and press yes for that and continue on with the process. Again, any other questions that it asks, just go ahead and push yes for it, but that's the main one I wanted to highlight for you guys. Alright, so once I got through that installation process, this is the page that pops up on the screen that'll be shown on the back side of the mirror. This is the Magic Mirror software itself. So now that we've made sure that it's able to be installed, we're going to go ahead and set it up. Now that we proved that the software is working, we did a certain command in here, PM2 space stop space magic mirror. What that did was it stopped the magic mirror from trying to reboot that screen every time I closed it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do any of these background setting changes once Magic Mirror was installed. For the actual run of the Magic Mirror, I'm going to go ahead and reinstate this PM2 so that way we aren't having to worry about the program closing, or if things get shut down and whatnot, it'll automatically start. But for now, just because we're doing configuration items, we're going to go ahead and shut that off. Alright, so we're a little ways through the process of getting everything configured. The first thing that I've done is opened up the config.js file within Magic Mirror Pi directory. And the reason I did that was because we're going to edit a couple of the settings down here, specifically where we live. So I edited my city to show Duluth, but it asks for something called a location ID. The way that I was watching my tutorial video to kind of learn how to do this myself is actually outdated. So I'm going to show you guys the way that I had to learn how to do it. So the city list that I tried to pull up just was bonkers, didn't actually work. This is the Open Weather Map, which is the API that it uses. But what I did was I went to, go back one. What I did was went to weather and then found weather in your city. I tried Duluth, Minnesota, it doesn't pull up anything, so I tried just straight Duluth. You get 4 different answers for me. I then took all these GPS coordinates and I put them into Google to find out which one was actually mine. Turns out the top one is, so that's the location I went with. And now you'll notice you need that ID. Well, the ID is not the coordinates, and the coordinates don't actually matter. So you actually just click on the city you want to go to, and up on the task or the URL bar, you'll notice there's a code at the back end of this URL, 502.4719. That is actually the code that we need. So I then take that particular code, copy it, go back to my config.js and paste it in between the correct marks. Likewise, you want to do the same thing down below with weather forecast, and that is actually the correct location. So now we'll notice instead of pulling up New York's weather, I'll be able to get my own. So put in that one manually, go file save, and this time when we load it, we should be able to see Duluth. Alright, so I went ahead and started the software here, as we can see. And when it pulls up this time, we actually see the correct temperature in degrees Fahrenheit for Duluth, as we can see there. We also get to see the local forecast, and the other thing that it changed from previous times we booted this is everything's along the left side. The way to do that is to go on, I'll show you the code over here on my other actual personal computer. Some of these are saying like top left, top right when you see current weather module. All you got to do is change that to top left, and they load in sequence. So that's why it all of a sudden brought that from being over here and put it down below. I don't know who configured these extra high messages, but those are there as well. And then we got the news that I'll probably keep. I'll probably get rid of these messages there just because they take up a bulk of the screen, and I want to have this whole area to be able to see my face. So now that we've got the Pi actually figured out, there are other bells and whistles that we could have put into this, and they're posted online as well with this this person's tutorial. They've got things like Spotify, as well as adding your calendar events into there. Personally, I have a calendar that I use on my phone, so I didn't put my calendar events in here. Just wanted to show the basic setup of how this looks. I'll probably end up posting another video later of a better tutorial with this, so we can all see what that looks like and how it works later on. But for now, this is kind of the end of the project, and now what we're going to do is throw this guy into the frame so you guys can see exactly what it looks like on the other side of the glass. Before we finally throw this thing into the frame here, I want to show you a couple of things in hindsight that I probably would have changed and will change for my next mod. The first thing I'm going to show you guys is probably going to be the biggest pain in the keister putting this into the frame, and that is the power button being on this little strip, which goes into all the components that were on the back. I'm going to have to find some way to have that poking out the side, which I'll probably just drill the hole for and pull those through. But nevertheless, it does create a little bit of a challenge. The next thing I want to tell you guys about is make sure you have an a monitor that doesn't require an adapter. This one's a little bit older, and so I had to throw an HDMI to VGA adapter on it just to make that cord work. Next time I'm going to actually just buy a monitor only for the sake of throwing it in here. The last thing I'll show you guys is these two USB cords coming out for the mouse and keyboard. I think next time I'm just going to buy wireless ones and throw the USB dongles into the actual thing, so that way I don't have to mess around with these. I can keep those stashed away rather than having to plug them in and out each time. But for the most part, those were the only things that I ran into that were issues with this. Otherwise, as far as getting the operating system going and getting the program on here to run, fairly simple. The only other thing that I'll mention, because it's easy now, and again I'll be pulling that keyboard off, the fact that the keyboard, the last thing I'll show you guys before coming off of this is that with this program, it's a little bit tricky to use. So I'm using Alt-Tab right now to go back and forth between programs that are running. So if I'm just on this, you're not going to see anything. But in order to get out of this, for whatever reason, if you need to, you either push Alt to bring up that bar and close it. Otherwise, you push Alt-Tab to go back to the command prompt, which I leave running in the background just to have there, so we don't have. So if I need to run a command that'll change anything or stop the program, I can do it from there. Or again, just by pushing Alt and getting that taskbar at the top. Alright guys, so now that we got the glass in place and the frame, along with the monitor, one thing we'll notice again that was kind of a bad play on my part was the fact that the monitor itself is not big enough to fit all the way from one point to another on the frame. What that's going to do is create a little bit of a challenge. I'm probably going to have to put another backboard across here just to support it and make sure, obviously, that it doesn't go falling throughout the entire frame. But if we did this with another monitor, it would fit a little bit more securely and not sway side to side on the inside of the frame. So we're getting down toward the end stages here. We finally got the Raspberry Pi tucked up here inside, the power extension power that I've got on the side that connects for the monitor power as well as the Raspberry Pi power. We got the VGA wrapped in, taped everything kind of down a little bit. Again, I'll probably be redoing this in a more solid fashion once I redo all this frame, so I'll be doing another video after this. But for the sake of this project, just to show you guys what it looks like, we've got all those frame pieces put in. I did put a support in there for that monitor so it's not bouncing around at all. So it looks like everything's pretty much set up. All we got to do is connect it to power and show you guys what it looks like standing up. And this is what our finished product looks like. So it's got the monitor on the back side. You can tell that there's a little bit of see-through coming through there from the VGA cord and the red light coming from the Pi. But for the most part, this thing isn't passing too much light. I would definitely put some kind of fabric or something next time toward the bottom to kind of cover that area up. But otherwise, we've got all the functionality that we're supposed to have. We got the news, the weather, the date, these random "you look good" messages that just keep showing up on the bottom. I have to figure out how to get rid of those. or not. But otherwise, everything's there that we need. And this has been another Brian presentation on how to make a magic mirror. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys like the video and are looking to follow my next project that I make. Again, it's probably just going to be a remake of this one. Otherwise, please feel free to leave a comment if you guys want to, and we'll see you next time.